why and how everybody needs to strength train. Peter, why did you start strength training back in the day?
Wow, this taking me back. I was just trying to think about this. My brother, probably early high school, he's a few years older than I was, got a bench and some leg curl, leg extension kind of attachment to it. And he was using it. He's like, "Oh, don't you use it, not okay." And I remember just kind of watching him a little bit because I've never touched anything like that. And so he was gone. I was like, "Oh, now's my chance." So I go down to the basement and he was benching, and I was, I could do what he could do, right? It was much bigger than I was. And I got pinned by the bar, and I put clips on it because that's what he did. And I was stuck. So because I was so little, I could kind of slide over to the side, let the bar rest on one side of the bench so I could just sneak out. It took a while. I mean, there was probably, I don't know, 65 pounds on the bar. Not a whole lot, but it was like, okay, I don't think I should do that again. Like, it's like, that could have been really bad. So that's a very fun first memory. What about you?
Yeah, following in Big Brother's footsteps there. For me, I have this memory of like third or fourth grade. My little friend group at the time was just arguing and debating over who was the strongest in the group and kind of ranking all of us. And I was ranked last out of like the 4 or 5 of us. I was like, I don't like that. So I started a little push-up and sit-up routine and slowly worked my way up. And
like that day you started the push-up sit-up routine?
I couldn't tell you if it was that day, but I remember that being the impetus for it. And then, soon enough, I just liked it and kept going, and that reason evolved into taking it more seriously for football in high school, and then more of a, holistic longevity approach down the road. But I do remember that being the initial seed of, I'm going to shut up that guy who thought I was the weakest in the friend group.
Did you ever do the ranking again?
No, but I think my guess is if I ran into them now, it would be different, hopefully, at least, unless they've done some good work too over the last couple decades. But who knows? Maybe they have. Yeah. But
nice. Well done.
Yeah. Anyways, you guys you might look at us now and think that we have just been, living and breathing strength training for our whole lives, and maybe for a while, but there's still a time where we were just dipping a toe in the water here too. So hopefully our goal today is that you're convinced that, there is a reason for you to strength train, because there is really. And we're going to go over a few different reasons why this is so beneficial. And at least one of them is going to speak to you. Yeah. So main topics today: why every human being should strength train. And then 2, how, how to train for strength and hypertrophy being building muscle mass. Just listening and not watching, what we just pulled up on the screen is some different organizations' models of all the different skills that you can train as an athlete, right? So, stamina, coordination, flexibility, speed, etc. They all matter, right? They're all part of what makes you a better athlete, a better human. But why prioritize strength? Why are we focusing on that today? Okay. 3 main reasons we're going to go over. Number 1, injury prevention and longevity. Number 2, time efficiency. And number 3, body composition and maintaining a healthy body weight. Okay, so let's dig into each of those 3 things with injury prevention and longevity. Okay. In a nutshell, injury occurs when the demands put on your body exceed your capacity. Okay. What we just pulled up on the screen, if you're listening and not watching, visual of kind of an ideal balance of the various skills you can have as a person. So we have mobility, and think of that really as just terms of, can you move well? Okay, can you access different positions, right? On top of that foundation of movement, we want to build strength right away. Okay? We want to have capacity in those positions, because again, injury occurs when demands exceed capacity. On top of that strength, we want to build power, the ability to move fast. Hey, I might be strong, but do I hurt myself when I move too quickly into certain positions? And then lastly, on top of that, conditioning, stamina, the ability to do those things for a long time, right? So that's ideally how this works, right? Now we pulled up 2 visuals of pyramids that we, represent people we typically see coming into the gym for the first time, that are less than ideal, right? So the top pyramid here is kind of the cardio junkie, right? Someone who, they love going out for runs, they might be ultra marathoner even, which is awesome. Super good for your health, super impressive things, right? But you want to have a foundation of mobility and strength and power underneath that conditioning, right? Otherwise you put yourself at risk for overuse injuries because your body's not strong enough to handle the impact of all the work you're doing. You might just be really stiff because you spend all this time the same thing over and over and over. And you don't move in kind of various ways enough, so you still look kind of at risk.
So this over like cardio junkie person, I love thinking of like guys in their 30s and getting into 40s. Oh, I work out, like I ride and I go for jogs, and then I go to play frisbee with my son on the beach, or I play soccer, or I'm doing a pickup game of who knows what, even beer pong, for instance. All of a sudden you're moving and changing directions and moving way different than what your body's used to. And the next day you're like, why is my ankle hurt? Hey, why is this going on? And it's just because people just put all their energy into one bucket, and all of a sudden, like I said, their body's not able to access these things that when you're 22, you had all these and you didn't realize it until now. All you've done the last 2 decades is this same thing.
Yeah. I didn't build a base to support kind of general activity for sure. And then our other pyramid we have pulled up on the screen here is kind of more your yoga fanatic, right? Someone who's got this mobility, which is awesome. Again, like that's a good foundational skill to be able to move into some different positions. But if we don't build strength on top of that, you might be as injury proof as you think. Again, injury occurs when demands exceed capacity. If you can get into certain positions, certain end range spots, but then you don't have much capacity there, you're still at risk of injury there for sure. If being hypermobile is not a great thing without the strength to back it up, right? So again, we want to have strength to support the mobility we have, to support the explosive tasks and the conditioning tasks that we're going to do, right? If you're not convinced, simple logic. But linked on the slide here we have is a study that says strength training significantly outperforms stretching for reducing injuries. This was a meta-analysis of a bunch of different studies that showed almost a 70% risk reduction of injury from strength training versus about 4% from stretching regimens, right? And of course, that's going to vary depending on what exactly your regimen is. This was just a kind of a conglomeration of a bunch of different studies, but the magnitude of the difference of that effect should show you that strength training is going to be more significant for reducing your injury risk than just stretching.
And then we'll throw in our one more that we don't have on the slide is think of your classic old school power lifter. Their strength and power bucket, generally, especially their strength bucket, is big, but they can't bend over and pick up their kid. They walk up a couple flights of stairs and they're like, oh my gosh, I'm so winded. So are they touching those other things enough? Yes, we love that strength and power, hence the talk of today, but don't completely neglect those other two. Hence why there's a pyramid, a structure.
Yeah, and we'll have some talks coming up about how strength can actually improve mobility and other things like that. But yeah, great point there. We want to be a well-rounded individual. So going into longevity now, we want to have the capacity, and not just to prevent injury, but to also independently enjoy the later decades of your life. That's what it's all about. I think many of us, want to live to 100, but do you want to spend the last 20 years, relying on other people around you to do everything? Nope. We want to be able to be ourselves, in those final decades. So, why is strength training a huge portion of that? Adults lose about 1% to 2% of their muscle mass per year, with strength being lost even a little bit faster than that after the age of 30 in the absence of training, right? If you have the aspiration of kicking ass when you're 85, you can't afford to be average when you're 50. That's love from Dr. Peter Attia. Strength training and this protein can greatly prevent this decline in strength. And especially if you haven't, maxed out your genetic potential and you're 45, well, then you can still get way stronger. You can still get stronger at any age if you haven't, truly reached the pinnacle that your body is capable of, which is the case for the vast majority of us out there, right? So I just remember, being, I don't know, maybe I was in school or so, and my grandma needed to ask me to get a big baking dish out of the bottom shelf of her kitchen. I was like, she's actually not strong enough to pick up this baking dish anymore. Like that's crazy, right? And then the things that robbed my grandparents of their independence in later years wasn't the, lack of the ability to touch their toes, right? It was just they couldn't stand up on their own off the couch anymore. The strength to do those day-to-day tasks had left them, right? And so you might look at someone, squatting heavy weight in the gym and think, oh, what's the point of that? Well, many things, but one is just say if you can do, X amount of weight on your squats now, it's going to be a long time before you can't get up off the couch.
And so from that injury prevention standpoint too, looking at collision-based sports, whether it's football, rugby, bobsled even, and getting in a car accident when your body has more muscle mass and more strength, it's so much more resilient to that stress that's there. know many stories where people have been in car accidents, motorcycle accidents, and people are dumbfounded how the injuries can be so different depending on what that person's background was and what they showed up with, to how that recovery process was. And like Kyle mentioned too, we've all been around people when we've watched them slowly decline. Sometimes you haven't seen your grandparent for a year or two. All of a sudden you show up and you're like, whoa, mom, like what just happened to them? Like they used to be, jumping off the chair, running around chasing me. Like they stopped. What just happened, and like Kyle mentioned, like 1% to 2% per year. And all of a sudden they hit that tipping point and their life has to be dramatically altered, so like the Peter Attia quote that Kyle mentioned, I was like, that's me, I don't want to be average. That's one reason I'm getting close to that 50. And I was like, yeah, there's so many things I want to do as I age here, that what I do now matters so much to my future self. And being under muscled is probably the number one thing that I see in people as they age. So anything we can do now to put that on, I don't care how old you are, male, female, doesn't matter. There's stuff that you can do now that you'll thank yourself for as you age.
And we're lucky to have, be inspired by clients in the gym who are going on ski trips in their 60s, or clients who at age 90 just wanted to have the strength to climb a big flight of stairs to go watch their, granddaughter play college sports. It's like, hey, those things that you take for granted now, if you can do those things in those later decades, you're elite, right? So, let's get out of being below average or average now. Let's strive to be elite now and then maintain that throughout your life, right?
Amen.
So moving on to big reason number 2. Okay, so time efficiency. Strength training positively impacts the other traits on that pyramid we were talking about earlier, right? So mobility, how can strength training positively impact mobility? If you train through full ranges of motion, right? Say I do a deep squat, sitting my butt down below my knees. If I'm doing deep push-ups, if I'm doing full range of motion pull-ups and overhead work, those things mobilize my ankles, my hips, my shoulders, and it can reinforce the mobility work you're doing. Most people think of the strength training athlete as being someone who's just super stiff, and if you just go into the gym and do half depth leg press and bench press and leave, yeah, you'll probably be pretty tight, right? But we can use strength training to reinforce your mobility work, right? Power is force times velocity, expressing force quickly, so like an explosive jump or a sprint. And strength training, improving your ability to produce force is going to improve power to a point. So if you want to be more explosive, getting stronger will help with that to a point. If I can deadlift 500 pounds and you can deadlift 300 pounds, who can pick up 200 pounds faster? Probably me, right? I can't pick up 500 pounds. So just a nice round number example. And then conditioning. How can strength training positively impact conditioning? I love the example of a hike, right? If each step up the mountain is easier, if each step up the mountain is a lower percentage of your maximal lower body strength effort, well, all the 1,000 of those steps, it takes a lower cardiovascular toll on the body, right? So generally someone who is strength training is going to be able to hang with the cardio junkie on the hike better than the cardio junkie will be able to hang with the strength person doing heavy strength tasks, right? So again, we're not saying to not train these other skills. They're all valuable, but if you have to cut down on time, having a strength training centric routine is where you're going to get the most bang for your buck. I do hit my mobility warm up, and then strength training reinforces that mobility. I do a little bit of moving quick, and then having the ability to produce force gives me the ability to produce power. Then if I prioritize strength, I just have a higher capacity. Things that demand cardiovascular stamina are now less taxing to me just because I am a stronger individual. So if you have to prioritize one, pick strength, right? And we see this all the time with people who maybe they have this idea of this optimal routine where they exercise every single day for an hour plus a day, and then they get busy and they just want to drop it all until they have this perfect window to do that perfect routine again. And that's really just an unrealistic expectation of your life, right? Most of us are probably going to, especially if you're in the, the parent, busy professional stage of your life. Hey, if you can pick 2 or 3 days a week to train, make strength training the priority, and you're going to be better off for it.
And then the nice thing with these things too is I think that's a good thing in life too, is you can't be great at everything all at the same time and making everything better. Generally, what can I almost put on maintenance? Can I just do one 30-minute, hike, walk, whatever, but I'm going to have 2 to 3 times a week where I'm going to do a 30-minute strength routine. I'm going to be able to continue to increase my capacity in that regards without losing some of those other attributes. And like Kyle said, like your warm up, you can get some mobility stuff with some very lightweight, just body weight. You could be out on a hike and just hang out on the bottom of a squat when you take your recovery and get some water. There's so many times that you can implement some of these small little things in your day-to-day life if that time is of the essence, which for most of us, like Kyle just mentioned, sure is.
Indeed. And then last thing on this point is that the benefits don't go the other direction unless you're a complete novice. So strength training is the one that's hard to kind of sneak in, really. If I'm doing a yoga class for the first time, sure, maybe hanging out in, that lunge position, doing warrior 1, warrior 2 will get your legs stronger if that's a totally new stimulus to you. But after a certain point in time, there's no progressive overload there. That's not going to be enough strength to, again, have you kicking butt when you're 90, right? If you're, getting into cycling or running for the first time, you might see some strength improvement to your legs initially if you've been going from a sedentary lifestyle to that. But again, the load being put on your body, the amount of force you're producing on each step, on each pedal is a fraction of what you would do from a hard set of 8 lunges in the gym, right? So these things don't really positively impact strength the way strength can positively impact them, which is why, again, if you only have 2 or 3 days a week for a structured exercise, prioritize strength, sneak in mobility while you're watching TV, and get some walks on lunch break to kind of keep up your conditioning base, right? Prioritize strength. Getting into our third big reason, healthy body composition and maintaining a healthy body weight, right? Brief summary of how to gain muscle. You need to strength train, you need to eat enough protein, and you need to eat enough calories to gain weight. If you're doing the first 2 things, that'll be mostly muscle, right? Now, here's how to lose weight, emphasizing body fat. You need to strength train, you need to eat enough protein, and you eat in a caloric deficit to lose weight. And if you do the first 2 things, strength train and protein, it'll be mostly body fat, right? If you want to maintain weight but improve body composition, strength train, eat enough protein, and eat at caloric maintenance, right? Long story short, what's the common theme there? We should all be strength training and eating enough protein. Like that's the non-negotiable no matter what. Many people think of, I strength train to bulk up and throw on slabs of muscle, and I just do cardio and sweat off the body fat, right? And that's really not how it works. Your body will gain or lose weight based on your total caloric balance equation, but strength training should always be a part of the routine to either have the weight you're gaining be muscle or the weight you're keeping be muscle while you lose body fat, right?
And so many clients, the yo-yo diet, that term that's thrown around, it's so common is, like Kyle just saying, is people will, I just need to move a little bit more, just do a lot more cardio, back off on my calories, go down from 1,500 to 1,200, and I'll lose the weight and I'll be stoked, And a lot of people have achieved that for their first time, and then they go back to a normal, and then their body goes up, and their body fat came down, but also their muscle mass came down, so their total metabolic rate came down. They put on this when they go back to a normal lifestyle, all of a sudden they gain more weight. Again, now they're at this weight, maybe what they were before, but because they didn't strength train, their metabolic rate is a little bit lower. So now they're the same size, but they're fatter. And then they go through the yo-yo up and down, and all of a sudden it's like, how did I get here? Hey, no, what used to work for me no longer works anymore. We've had so many people come into our gym in the last 20 years. That's their story. That's where they're at. And that piece that Kyle just is overemphasizing, strength train. Why is this important? Why is that there? That's a perfect example. So many people their lives can literally change because of the amount of strength training and prioritizing that muscle mass and get out of that under muscled, over fat state.
Yeah. You never want less muscle, right? Even that toned look that many think they're going for, there's no such thing as toning a muscle. All you can do is build or lose muscle and gain or lose body fat, right? So being toned is having muscle and not having a lot of body fat, right? So that physique that you want, I guarantee you it involves strength training. And another favorite quote I like from someone, I forget who this is attributed to, so apologies to them. You're not going to, just because you learn how to drive a car doesn't mean you're going to be a NASCAR driver, right? A lot of people have this fear of being too jacked, right? If that happens to you, congratulations. It went too well, and you can now back off a little bit, essentially. But you're not going to wake up one day and be like, oh no, I'm more shredded than I wanted to be. I promise you it's not that easy. So you can strength train, eat enough protein, eat the appropriate amount of total calories to kind of put you at the size that you want to get to, right? Anything else there?
No, love it.
Cool. All right. So those are our 3 big reasons, right? Injury prevention and longevity, time efficiency, healthy body composition and weight. At least one of those speaks to you, I'm sure, if not all 3 of them. So now you're bought in. Okay, I'm ready to do this, but what? What does this even mean? What do I need to do, right? We're going to stick to the big fundamental movements, okay? Those are squatting, hinging at your hips, pushing things away from you with your upper body, pulling things towards you, and core work. Those are kind of our big fundamental movements. So squatting, squats, split squats, lunges, hinging, things where I'm hinging at my hips, like a deadlift and RDL. Those things work like kind of the butt and hamstring muscles more, as the squats work more of your quadriceps. Pushing things away from me, like a push-up, a dumbbell press, a bench press, an overhead press. Those things tend to work the chest, the shoulders, the triceps. Pulling things towards me, row variations, pull-ups, pull-down variations. Those things to work the muscles of the back and the biceps. And then torso work, core work, planks, side planks, carries, things like that challenge the musculature of your torso and kind of keep you nice and stable. Okay. So hitting those big fundamental movements train all the major muscle groups of the body. And we don't want to go in there and start doing finger curls if we're crunched for time, right? We want to do these things that have high payoff, that we involve a lot of musculature. You can add isolation work as desired around those big things, but we're going to hit those fundamental movements first, right? And then the other main concept is progressive overload. So the body needs to be challenged to warrant adaptation. So what that means is you can't just walk into the gym, do 2 sets of 10 of squats with 10 pounds and then do that for forever and continue to see results, right? The first time that might've been a novel stimulus and done something for you, but we need to progress over time. We can do that in a couple different ways, right? So let's talk about exact parameters. How many days a week should we train? How many sets? How many reps? For beginners, we're generally going to start probably about 2 days a week and doing about 3 to 4 sets of like 6 to 12 reps of the fundamental movements. Let's talk about each of those variables. Why 2 days a week? Well, if you haven't been doing this at all, you're going to see benefit from 2 days a week. We don't need to jump right into a 4 or 5 day a week routine. So we generally just start with a minimal effective dose, right? 3 to 4 sets, kind of same thing. You're going to see some benefit from that. That's enough sets to give you some time to practice and get better at the movements, but you probably don't need to start with 10 sets right away. You're going to see benefit with less. And 6 to 12 reps is just generally a rep range where people tend to do well. If you go into the gym and try to 1 rep max your first time, one, you might hurt yourself because you don't have the skill to lift that heavy of weight safely. But also if you do 30 reps, most people don't have the mental fortitude to do a very hard 30 rep set, right? It's probably just going to be light and easy and you're going to stop. Because if it was a really hard 30 rep set, you're in a very uncomfortable zone for a long time, to put it shortly. So doing like 6 to 12 is kind of a zone where people tend to push themselves safely, right? Now, as you get more advanced, there are kind of 2 main things that you might do. You might add more volume, mainly in terms of the number of sets per week you're doing. That's the main driver of hypertrophy, of building muscle mass. How many hard sets a week do you do? Any set from 5 to 30 reps at the same level of exertion is going to have a similar net effect on building muscle mass. It's more about how hard was the set, how challenged was the body. So therefore, you can have a variety of different rep ranges in that range and then find ways to add more sets per week. What are some ways you could do that, Peter? How could you add more sets per week?
Probably the simplest for most people is just frequency. Some people, if they try to do, your classic, it's leg day. I don't know, actually, how many people do leg day anymore? Most people skip that. But yeah, if you do like 20 sets of stuff, like you're going to be so sore, screw that, I'll never do again. Again, one of my first experiences ever squatting, I had that same thing. I didn't know any better. I didn't have somebody to teach me this stuff like what we're trying to do now. But frequency can be good. Modifying more patterns that are in there. I used to do one pattern. I did a squat for 3 sets of 10. Now I'm going to have a front squat, and I may pair that followed up with a lunge. Being able to get more work done in the same amount of time. There's so many variables, which what makes this really fun is you don't need to do the same thing. Oh, here we go again. Got to go and do my routine. All of our programming, there's always changes, enough to keep the stimulus kind of novel so that you keep improving, but also not enough that you don't get good at anything, so that you get to practice that coordination and repeating that pattern, getting more efficient and getting more value out of that.
Yeah. You have options here, right? You could train more days per week. You could add more exercises to your workout. You could just do more sets of the same exercises. The nickname in the industry for hypertrophy training is that it's idiot proof. As long as you just do enough sets, it's going to work, right? At least this portion of your program will work. There's, you might need to work on the nutrition variables too, but just do enough sets, right? The other main way you can progress is intensity, right? So intensity is the main driver of strength. And with intensity in terms of strength training, we mean load. How much weight are you using, right? At some point, you need to progress in weight, not just sets and reps. So again, to use our example of that beginner who walked into the gym and did 2 sets of 10 with 10 pounds on their squat, if they did 2 sets of 12 the next week, that's progression. 2 sets of 15, that's progression. But keep following that logic for forever. And at some point, you're not even really getting stronger. It just turns into training muscular endurance. If I'm doing 2 sets of 50 with 10 pounds, that is better than 10, but I'm actually going to be not really any stronger when it comes to, can I squat 100 pounds than someone else who's actually been progressing in load, right? So we want to build in weight eventually. Especially if this is a primary goal for you, getting into lower rep ranges, like in the 1 to 5 rep range, can further progress peak strength. Now, that's not mandatory. You don't have to go that low. You can more in that kind of 5 to 8 kind of range and still get stronger and be progressing load over time. But if you really want to work on your peak strength, going to, more towards a truly maximal effort will more efficiently.
And just thinking of what happens in real day life. I got to bend over and pick up this big heavy thing. I got to do this. And generally you do it one time, so getting that skill as you develop that foundation, getting into that skill of getting better and better at these different movements and lifting heavier things, but not doing that many of them is, like, again, what you do in life. Yeah. So that's something we like people to kind of move towards, just so that they become more injury resilient, back onto the point that that Kyle was just saying.
Totally. And, do those efforts have a higher risk than doing like your set of 10? And yes, they do, right? But if you progress to that safely, if you've built good technique, you gradually build in load, doing that in a controlled environment like a gym will prepare you for life, like Peter's talking about, and make you more injury proof outside of the gym. Right? So there's really no such thing as a bad exercise or a dangerous amount of weight. Proper progression is what's key, right? And if you do that well, you only make yourself more and more bulletproof to stuff happening outside the gym.
That is a great point.
To wrap it all up, strength train. If that's all you took away from this, and you're like, well, I'm just going to go to the gym and strength train. I kind of forget all the little details, but I'm motivated to go do this. Great, right? That's awesome. That's far and away point number 1. Why? Prevent injury, improve your capacity, be efficient with your time, and be kicking ass when you're 90, right? One of those reasons hopefully speaks to you, right? What are you going to do? You're going to do your fundamental movements. You're going to push, pull, squat, hinge. You're going to keep your sets and reps simple at first, like 3 to 4 sets of 6 to 12 reps, and then you're going to add progressive overload over time. You're not going to do the same workout over and over. You're going to progress somehow, some way. You're going to mainly focus on intensity, building in weight to progress strength, and you're going to add more volume, more sets to send the signal to build muscle mass, right? Early on, your training is going to do both those things. You can focus on one or the other over time, depending on your goals specifically. You even go through seasons where you focus on one more than the other, and vice versa, right? We are here to help, right? So hopefully we've motivated you to take some action today. If you would still like some guidance on how to best do this, how to do this optimally, one, if you can train with us in person in Santa Barbara, where we would love to have you. We also have our online training options, which are going to be linked in the notes here for the video, the podcast, wherever you're listening, for guidance for wherever you're training. So we are happy to help you decrease the barrier to doing this and make this a part of your life, because it should be a part of everyone's life.
It's so worth it to take the time, learn, do it well. Like I said, use somebody to help you, somebody who's knowledgeable, understands just basic biomechanics and movement. If it's not something that you guys can do with us, but you will never regret that, and doing it right from the get-go. I love people that are raw. It's so much easier. They don't come in with all these preconceived things. So building that base and then just continuing to make it a part of your daily, weekly routines and habits. I said, you will never regret that.
And like I said, you don't have to go be a NASCAR driver. Just learn how to drive, right? The basics here will take you so far and have so much immense benefit for you for now and for decades to come. And it's kind of like investing. Hey, the best time to start was 20 years ago. Second best time is today, right? Just take action.
All right. See you guys in the gym.
See you in the gym. Love it. Catch you next time.